BBC Two Newsnight.
With the Tories facing yet another by-election defeat, they decide to make John Major irreplaceable. Is this wise? Good evening. Unless he falls under a bus, John Major will lead the Conservative Party into the next election. The 1922 committee has suspended the process which might have made another possible challenge to him. I'll be asking the former Conservative spin doctor Hugh Culver why backbench MPs have confirmed in office a man some of his colleagues believe can't win them the election. The benefits of Bondi. The lessons for British politicians of Australia's attempts to make sure you don't get social security rewards without being prepared to work. The Toronto blessing comes to Britain and worshippers collapse, giggle and make animal noises. The Canadian pastor behind it joins us from the scene of his service to answer the claims of a Cambridge theology don that what he's about has a lot more to do with collective psychosis than Christianity. The rocket is primed, the launch pad is ready. Steve Bennett, the man who hopes to be the first individual to put a rocket into space, joins us to tell us what sugar power can achieve. The Conservative Party chairman said there wouldn't be any more challenges to the Prime Minister's authority, and he was right. Whatever happens in tonight's by-election or in the local elections, John Major is secure in place for as long as he wants the job. It may be a deft piece of manoeuvring by John Major which persuaded the backbench 1922 committee to suspend the procedure, but that hasn't stopped some Conservative MPs muttering about the way the matter's been handled. Mark Mardell reports.
John Major, tonight at dinner with the Israeli Prime Minister, is riding higher in his party's esteem now than at any time since he won the last election. But it may not last. If the local elections in 3 months' time were bad for the Conservatives, the party could have had one of its dizzy spells. So while he's ahead, they've blocked any possibility of a challenge.
I welcome it. I think it's the right decision. I'm not in the least surprised that it's the decision that my colleagues came to. One of your colleagues asked me about the possibility some weeks ago, and I said it wasn't in the real world. Now perhaps all of your colleagues will accept that there isn't going to be a challenge, and there never was.
The now suspended rules meant even Prime Ministers could get the sack. Labour, in contrast, only allow a challenge in opposition. Seeing Mrs Thatcher's fall led to John Major's elevation, he's painfully aware of the danger. His rocky premiership has been dogged by continual speculation that he too would be given the boot. In the summer, Mr Major resigned, fought and won, but he doesn't want to do it all again. The statement from Sir Marcus Fox, the chairman of the committee which represents all backbench Tory MPs, reads, "The 1922 committee has agreed that the present rules as they affect a possible challenge to the leader are suspended until after the next general election." He added that while a rule change was being looked at, the uncertainty involved was not acceptable. The MPs banged their desks, their way of saying yes. While John Redwood has been studiously loyal since his unsuccessful leadership challenge, opinions in his camp vary tonight. Some say last summer's decision was final. This is just a clearing-up operation.
It's a very good idea. I think, as far as I was concerned, the leadership election as an issue was over last summer, and I'm surprised that anybody's even thinking about it. But certainly this is an excellent decision by the 1922 committee, and I'm sure will be welcomed by the entire Conservative Parliamentary Party.
But another Redwood supporter told me it shouldn't be blocked. It's redundant. He wasn't going to be challenged and he should have had more confidence. Another said he was going to write a letter of complaint to the chairman of the 22. I can't understand how the voting system works. How do you abstain when everyone just bangs their desk in approval? But a whip told me the real story. If they hadn't done it, would have woken up one morning in May with a couple of anonymous MPs telling the press Major must go. We've got to get serious. We've got an election to fight, he said. John Major gave another good Commons performance today. The Tories feel the shine is coming off Tony Blair. In the last few days, the Conservatives have moved on to a war footing. The opposition say they're ready.
What the people of this country want is a general election so that they get to choose who's going to be Prime Minister. They don't want to leave it to some hole and corner decision by just a few Tory MPs.
What they cannot do by these rule changes, by dubious constitutional procedures, is hide the real dissatisfaction among many Conservative MPs, including some very senior ones, about the performance of this government and many of its members.
But John Major must be very satisfied that his friends have moved to shut down an option for his opponents at a time when it'll create the least fuss.
Well, we're joined now from Westminster by the Conservative Party's former Director of Communications, Hugh Culver. Hugh Culver, isn't this decision effectively saying that the possible damage caused by a leadership election is probably greater than the possible damage caused by having John Major as leader?
Well, I think the whole thing is actually somewhat extraordinary, really. This should have been put to bed, and I think some of us thought it was going to be last July when the Prime Minister mounted his successful leadership challenge. And I think if it was felt necessary to put the last nail in the coffin of the possibility of a challenge, then it's the right thing to do, but it will clearly raise eyebrows.
Why?
Well, I mean, the idea that you still, at this late stage, have to produce a situation where you formally agree to do this will seem to some people extraordinary. And I find it amazing, as some people on your film showed, that there is still even now talk that this is the wrong thing to do and in some way negative. The last thing the Conservative Party would want would be a leadership challenge in the run-up to an election, and to have closed it off is the very, very sensible thing to have done.
Well, let me just find out what we can about how Conservative backbench MPs are seeing things. Mark Mardell is also down at Westminster in another studio. How much disquiet is there how much muttering among MPs?
There's a fair bit. I fully expected when I went over the road to the House of Commons tonight to find them saying, well, it's just a full stop on a process, it doesn't matter very much. But as well as those I've reported who were moaning, a couple also said to me, rather in a tight-lipped way, I'm not going to say anything, I want to talk to my colleagues about this. And I can tell you that there is talk, and I don't know whether it'll actually happen, but there is talk of some of John Redwood's supporters writing to Sir Marcus Fox to complain about the way the whole process was carried out. Some of them feel that they've been bounced into it. Not that it was necessarily wrong to do it, but that there wasn't a proper election, it was just banging of desks and away we go. And they're not really very happy about the way it's been done.
Hugh Culver, is it really a sign of the Prime Minister's strength that he can only assure his position by suspending the procedure that might have been able to challenge?
Well, I think it was a great shame, as I say, that it wasn't done ages ago, but I don't really accept that point. I mean, you know, there are some, I'm afraid, it has to be said, crazy backbenchers who it seems, and it only takes a small number to do it, who it seems would be prepared, maybe, to contemplate mounting a challenge, depending on what happens over the next 12 months or so, and to have put that to bed now, finally, seems to me to be right.
So you think Mrs Thatcher should have perhaps taken the same step before the last election?
Well, I think a lot of people in the Conservative Party and in the country in general will remember, whatever they thought about Mrs Thatcher as she then was, that was all a very messy business and looked terribly uncomfortable to everyone, and they must surely find a better way of dealing with this. And they certainly wouldn't want to go through all that again, so close to what is going to be a very crucial and clearly close election.
Just finally, Mark Mardell, is he safe now? Is it all over?
He's certainly consolidated his position at a time when he's extremely strong. Well, he's been extremely strong for about 10 days, and I suppose he might be strong for another 10 days or another 10 weeks. But he's coming up for a rather rocky period with the Scott report and then those local elections. So I think it was probably wise of him to do it right at this period, or wise of those Tories. But no, he can never be absolutely safe. Politics isn't like a court of law where the rules are firm. They've sort of torn them up tonight. If things went really, really badly wrong, they could tear them up again. I don't think that's going to happen, but if things went wrong, that's what they'd do.
No talk of they're trying to suspend the general election.
I don't think they'll get away with that.
Thank you both very much. Thanks. Well, what is now unmistakably a drawn-out general election campaign was stepped up tonight by the Labour leader. In a speech in West London, he attacked the Conservatives as people happy to campaign in the gutter.
It was not a member of the shadow cabinet that lost people their jobs, their homes, their businesses in the worst recession this country has ever known. It was not a Labour MP that has run down our schools and our hospitals. It was not an 11-year-old boy that raised taxes. It was a 17-year-old government that has made too many mistakes, told too many lies to be allowed to do it again.
Well, before Mr. Blair had even delivered his speech calling for a return to the moral high ground, his press office had issued a press release headlined "Major Tells Another Lie on Crime." But both parties know that in the end, real government isn't about name-calling, it's about problem-solving. One of the biggest problems